The quiet has been shattered. The elder Alcaraz has finally spoken, and his reaction to Ferrero's heartbreak is a total game-changer. This flips the script entirely. Look, I have tracked this tour for decades, assuming I was immune to any more shocks. You know the deal. Coaching carousels, bitter breakups, and court battles. That is just standard procedure in this business. However, this drama between Carlitos and Juan Carlos has been eating at me because the narrative simply does not fit. After weeks of absolute radio silence while the whole world pointed fingers, the head of the Alcaraz clan decided to act. The patriarch finally stepped into the spotlight. He gave a statement of only 7 words, yet those few syllables hit harder than any 60-minute press conference ever could. But wait. Before we get to the father's explosive words, we need to rewind. Without the history, none of this makes any sense. Imagine mid-December when the split went public and the community went wild. It was a total shock to the system. They had just finished a legendary season together, reaching incredible new heights. We are talking about 2 more Grand Slams and holding that world #1 spot again. It was pure magic. They secured another 2 majors and finished the year at the top again, with Ferrero winning Coach of the Year for the 2nd time. From the bleachers, it looked like paradise. Then those social media posts went live and the confusion began to spread like a fever. Why trash a winning formula right now? Why right on the eve of the Australian Open? What truly pulled the trigger? At first, everyone took the high road. Carlitos shared a beautiful tribute, pouring out his deep appreciation for their journey. Juan Carlos replied in kind, celebrating their victories, but he snuck in one specific phrase that triggered major alarm bells. "I would have liked to continue." Suddenly, the rumor mill went into a total meltdown. If the mentor wanted to remain and the trophies were piling up, what caused the fracture? Reporters started digging for truth. Whispers grew into loud accusations, painting the father, Carlos Alcaraz Gonzalez, as the primary antagonist in this story. He was portrayed as the invisible hand, the real puppet master, making the big calls while his 22-year-old superstar son simply watched from the side. Then came Ferrero's tell-all interview with Marca, and things got messy fast. He stopped holding back entirely. He bared his soul, describing how he bled for this team only to hit a wall over specific contract details. He revealed they gave him a 48-hour ultimatum, sign it or get out. He strongly hinted at the real cause. He suggested the decision came from the entourage, which was just a polite way of describing the family dynamics and the father. Juan Carlos was clever about it. He never flat out said the dad ruined the team. Still, anyone who has followed tennis for 5 minutes knew exactly what he was saying. He lamented the lack of talk, wishing they had met face-to-face to save the partnership, but that meeting was blocked. The hidden message was clear. Papa Alcaraz runs the show and he wanted Ferrero gone. Case closed. Naturally, the Spanish media lost their minds. Then Carlos Santos, an old mentor from the kids' youth, shared a story that gave everyone a sense of déjà vu. Santos claimed he lived through this exact nightmare. He asked for specific conditions, the father said no, and he was gone. He was fired instantly, and Santos did not sugarcoat it. He claimed the patriarch wields all the power in the camp, suggesting the player would stay loyal enough to keep a team forever if allowed. But the choice is not his. It painted a haunting picture, didn't it? Now the public sees a controlling parent micromanaging a superstar's life, choosing profits over performance and pushing a family business in El Palmar instead of the kids' tennis evolution. This narrative took off because it is a classic sports trope: the brilliant child and the overbearing parent who won't let go. Stories of tension between the coach and the father started leaking out, suggesting things had been brewing for ages. Word is they had a massive blow-up back in 2023 when Ferrero skipped the South American swing. The elder Alcaraz was reportedly livid. Then you have the battle of the tennis academies. Juan Carlos has his elite base in Villena, but the father wanted to grow the family's site in Murcia, demanding his son train there to build the brand. The financial talk got very ugly as well, with some whispers that Ferrero's share of the prize money was too high. Others said the money was irrelevant. This was simply a raw power struggle over who held the keys to the kingdom. Gossip suggested Ferrero wanted to prune the schedule, while the Alcaraz camp demanded their coach show up at every stop. It became a chaotic fight of different stories, leaving the actual facts buried under layers of conflicting ego between the opposing sides. Throughout this entire media storm, while Ferrero was doing interviews and the world was watching, while former mentors shared their views, and the Spanish press manufactured endless rumors, Carlos Alcaraz Gonzalez maintained a haunting silence. No soundbites, no formal statements. He didn't even offer a polite no comment. He just kept to his routine while his reputation was being publicly torn apart in specific tennis circles until this week, when EF finally trapped him and demanded he address the growing accusations. This is where the tale takes a gripping turn, because the elder Alcaraz held every card to react however he wished. He could have chosen war. He could have laid out every gritty detail of his side. He might have burned the image of him as an overbearing father sabotaging his kid's career. Fury, defense, or high emotion was expected. Instead, he gave precisely 7 words. Everyone opines based on what they know. End of. The message. That was the whole point. Think about it. Everyone judges based on what they know. He ended the discussion there. On the surface, it feels like a classic dodge, doesn't it? As if he is avoiding the fire with empty PR words that say nothing at all, but dissecting that tiny sentence shows it is packed with subtext. He isn't just brushing it off, he's drawing a hard line in the sand with based on what they know. That is the pivot. He isn't agreeing with the public view. He isn't saying anyone is right. He's hinting that the world sees through a different keyhole. Guessing rather than knowing the truth of the boardroom. It is a subtle but massive difference. Basically, he is suggesting the angry mob and perhaps Ferrero are missing the whole picture. Look at the psychology of that answer. When people know they failed or messed up, they usually lash out or bury you in excuses to justify their choices. They feel a desperate need to clear themselves, to prove they are innocent, and force you to see their side. But the Alcaraz head escaped that trap. He calmly noted that people can think whatever, while suggesting that their logic is based on half-truths. There is a refined class in his refusal to engage in a public brawl. Ferrero chose to speak out. He has that right. He has a brand to save and his own version of events to push. Yet for the father to keep his weapon sheathed, refusing to fire back with a dramatic story, shows a level of control that truly shocked me given the hate he's faced. Still, one part of this disaster bothers me, making it hard to believe the media's story, hook, line, and sinker. We are totally in the dark about the actual contract Ferrero turned down. The specific terms or deal breakers that killed the talks remain a total mystery. Even the coach said he wouldn't reveal the messy details of their fight. So, how can any fan claiming to be an expert to decide if the Alcaraz family's needs were fair? Let me play devil's advocate for a second and look at possibilities that show the father in a different light. Suppose Ferrero wanted legal powers that gave him too much control over Carlos's life. Maybe there were deep clashes about physical training or the schedule that the parents felt would hurt the prodigy. Consider if the ghosting rumors were actually true. Imagine a coach missing more and more tournament stops while asking for top-tier pay, leaving the family wanting a full-time partner. Reports from many sides suggest Ferrero was showing up less. He missed the South American swing in 2023. Moreover, he reportedly left after Carlos's shock opening loss at the Paris Masters last October, exactly when the group needed him for the finals. Carlos Santos, a coach from the early years, stated clearly the split was over money and the actual hours spent working with Carlos. If your main guide is physically gone during big moments, is it really crazy to ask for a new contract? Then there's the academy drama, where critics call the father greedy, supposedly, using his son's fame to help the family business in Murcia. But look at the history. Carlos is El Palmar, born and bred. They didn't just hang a sign. The local center is literally named the Carlos Alcaraz Tennis Academy. Can you blame a 22-year-old traveler for wanting his own bed instead of a hotel? Why drive an hour to Villena when home is right there? Furthermore, even Ferrero couldn't deny the cold truth. He publicly confessed that the brutal grind of the tour makes every moment at home gold. Practicing was always an option, he maintained, yet there was never any literal gun to his head to show up. That brings us to the big money mystery. If everyone was on the same page, why did negotiations turn into a war zone? We are clearly missing the heart of this narrative. Let us look at this from a completely different perspective for a moment. We're looking at a phenom who dominated both Paris and New York in 2025. He finished that year as king of the hill, sitting at the top of the world with 6 major titles by just 22. Perhaps the team saw that pile of riches and wanted more. They figured a change in machinery was the only way to scale the next peak. That isn't a sin, it is progress. Even the most legendary partnerships have a sell-by date. Staying still is a death sentence in this game. You need a shift. People love the Santos comparison, but it is totally different. Santos was working with raw clay, teaching a kid the basics. Ferrero took over when the engine was already roaring and piloted that ship straight into the stars. Nowadays, Carlos is a hardened general who has mastered every bit of the court. Mats Wilander pointed out the obvious. The boy has become a man and no longer requires a guardian. The roles shifted, and maybe Ferrero simply wasn't ready to adapt. One thing stands out to me. The star himself, Alcaraz, has maintained a total wall of silence regarding the recent chaos. No insults thrown at his mentor or his family. When it all went south, he posted a classy goodbye full of heart. He is back in the trenches with Samuel Lopez, appearing sharp, driven, and actually quite happy. If his inner circle was truly a dumpster fire and his father was a puppeteer, we would see his performance tank. Yet, his game remains unbreakable. It is wild how fast everyone jumped on the bandwagon to point fingers. Ferrero gives one tearful interview, claiming he is devastated and blaming the team, and suddenly the narrative is set in stone. People scream about a monstrous father ruining everything. Reality check, professional breakups are just part of the business. The coaching wheel keeps spinning, and you do not need a bad guy to explain why two people part ways. Sometimes the numbers just do not add up, a reality that both Ferrero and the Alcaraz family have quietly admitted. That phrase regarding limited knowledge keeps playing in my head because it proves how little we actually see. In reality, Ferrero wanted to stay the course, but the Alcaraz camp declined the terms. Basically, the price was not right. We know specific contract points hit a wall, but those secrets are buried deep. Walking away after a massive year is jarring. It is strange, sure, but it has happened before. Everything else is just us writing a soap opera on a blank canvas. Consider this. Maybe the silence from the Alcaraz camp was a brilliant chess move. He likely knew that fighting back would only fuel the firestorm right before the season's first major in Melbourne. Choosing the path of least resistance meant letting Ferrero get it off his chest. Let him talk, keep quiet, and move on. There is a deep Spanish tradition here that people from the outside do not grasp, especially those tight-knit Mediterranean families. Keeping it in the family is not just a choice, it is a way of life. Look at the Nadal dynasty for proof. Uncle Tony steered the ship for decades while his father managed things from behind the curtain. Did anyone call them obsessive? No. They were praised as the ultimate backbone, the protectors of a legacy. Why is it a scandal for Alcaraz Gonzalez to guide his son's future? He is walking a path already blazed by others. Is he truly a villain? Or do we just need someone to blame because the breakup was such a shock to the system? I am not saying the father is perfect. Errors were likely made in the heat of the moment. Maybe he played his hand too hard. Perhaps giving a legend a 48-hour ultimatum was a bit ruthless. Maybe the partnership could have survived if both sides put their egos aside and compromised. Those are all valid points. But the rush to label him a greedy tyrant feels wrong when we are guessing in the dark. That sharp response to the media was not just a dodge. It might be the most honest thing said in this whole mess. The world is overflowing with opinions built on nothing but rumors and fragile assumptions. We should probably slow down before we start handing out halos or pointing pitchforks. The upcoming tournament is the only thing that actually matters now. Carlos is heading to Australia in just a few days. He is chasing the final piece of his Grand Slam puzzle. Samuel Lopez is in the driver's seat now, stepping out of the shadows. The core support team, the trainer, the physio, the doctor, remains perfectly intact and ready. If Carlos crushes it in Melbourne and takes home that trophy, the critics will have nowhere left to hide. This sideline circus evaporates instantly if he triumphs, yet any stumble brings the Ferrero specter back to life. There it is! The vultures will shriek. Dissolving that bond was a death sentence for his rising career. The father ruined everything. Such is the raw, high-stakes reality here, where an entire bloodline's reputation hangs in balance. Victory alone dictates history, a brutal burden for any soul. Though brief, those 7-word remarks carry immense hidden pressure. I see it as a total exposure of their inner circle's master plan, ignoring media hype and PR spin entirely. Forget long-winded excuses or damage control. They are fixated solely on the sport, the sweat, and the final results. Let gold medals settle the debate. Whether you view it as grit or arrogance, perhaps we should trust his word. Listen to what he says directly. Spectators can yell whatever their leaks suggest, though truth remains remarkably scarce right now. Facts are few. A dynasty crumbled, 2 factions offer clashing realities, and we realize that Carlos has completely reset. The young star pursues a brand new agenda, while the peanut gallery fills the void with chaotic rumors and lies. A mere 7-word phrase shattered the quiet. It wasn't the explosive admission or dramatic legal firestorm the public was hungrily expecting. Instead, he offered a cold, mysterious signal, acknowledging that society simply projects its own desires onto the quiet void. Honestly, that is a masterclass in control. Declining to engage in the public spectacle is often the boldest move possible. The ultimate tactical masterstroke.